Good afternoon, and welcome to the next episode of the Reinventing America Schools webinar series. I'm Curtis Valentine, co-director of the Reinventing America Schools project at the Progressive Policy Institute. Today's event is co-sponsored by the 74. The Reinventing America Schools project, as I mentioned, is housed at PPI and promotes a model of schools we call 21st century school systems, or systems that provide parents with more choice, give schools more autonomy, in return for more accountability. Our research shows that public school systems that do this produce the most rapid improvement in student performance. Today's webinar is part of a series we are calling Untapped Expertise, HBCUs as Charter Authorizers. The title comes from a report I co-wrote with Dr. Karina Rausch of the National Association of Charter School Authorizers that highlights the historical impact historically Black colleges and universities, also known as HBCUs, have played in shaping the 21st century America, but more importantly, how they shape the 21st century's leaders in creating K-12 schools that meet the urgent needs of America's families and students. Before I have my panelists introduce themselves, we want to take a survey of the audience, of those of you who are signing in now. We want to give our speakers sort of a feel for who's listening and how you represent yourself. And so you'll see the question come up. And so the question is, which group do you identify with? Now, if you're like me, I'm a parent, educator, advocate, policymaker. I kind of fit in four categories. But for this specific conversation, and for this topic, particularly on HBCUs and on in the innovation and research and AI, how do you show up today? As a parent, as an educator, as a funder, as a journalist, as an advocate, or a policymaker? As you all are answering that, we will be giving that information back to our speakers and allow them to understand sort of who's out there so they can shape their answers in that way. So that being said, I do want to give each of my speakers an opportunity to introduce themselves, where they're at, what they do, and particularly how does their organization and the work they do impact and drive the area of artificial intelligence. So I'm going to start with my good brother, Jeff Livingston. Please introduce yourself, brother.
Thank you, Curtis, and thank you so much for the invitation to be here in this distinguished company. I am Jeff Livingston. I am CEO of a strategy consulting firm called Ed Solutions that tries to put market forces to work on behalf of outcomes, mostly via large foundations who invest in education and mission-based organizations as well. My work intersects AI mostly because there is no more important market force than AI right now in shaping what is going to be the future. And so on behalf of my clients and the students they work for, it has been my responsibility to do what I can do to make sure that AI is something that the communities I care about do, not something that the communities I care about watch get done to them. And I think that is a worthy goal at this point, and I'm proud to be able to do it.
Thank you so much, brother. I appreciate you. Let's stick with Jason Green.
All right. Thank you so much, Curtis. Great to see you all and glad to be also part of the conversation. My name is Jason Green. I am the president and co-founder of an organization called Your Way Learning. The work that we're doing is essentially leveraging AI to bring the best instructional practices into every classroom. As Jeff said, we are at what I believe to be a transformational moment. Not just for schools and classrooms, but also for how literally the world interacts with technology. And what's been driving my passion is how do we make sure that no one is left behind in this moment? The work that we're doing spans the US. We're working from New York City to Peoria, Illinois, to Minnesota and California, and throughout the South. We also work in Latin America, Central America, and South America. And that focus that we have on leveraging technology to really enhance learning, I think is really going to be an important part of how, as an AI developer, how we make sure that AI is actually used for the benefit of learning. And I often say not just for efficiency, but actually for driving deeper efficacy in classrooms. So glad to be here, and thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, Dr. Morris.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Messina Morris. I am a professor of practice at Morehouse College, as well as the director of Metaverse programs. You may wonder what exactly I do, but I am a trained biomolecular chemist who began teaching my advanced inorganic chemistry course completely in virtual reality in the spring of 2021. Myself and 3 other professors decided that we were going to make virtual reality the classroom for 2,200 young Black men at Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. And we did this during a pandemic. And from those 4 classes, we have launched 44 virtual reality courses. And now we are launching AI teaching assistants for our classroom to be at the intersection of extended reality and AI, as well as AI textbook assistance with our EdTech partners, Victory XR. So now we're actually putting AI agents inside of text peer-reviewed papers and allowing them to be able to explain, summarize, and understand, and then spew back to our students content in ways that they could actually understand it. So this is just meeting the students where they are, giving them 24/7 personalized ability to access the classroom.
Thank you so much. And again, we couldn't have this conversation without you because you're such a historic figure. Shout out to you, Women's History Month. You are making history right now. We want to give you your flowers and appreciate you. And you make us Morehouse men so proud that you're putting our school on the map. I do want to, before we get into our questions, I do want to sort of results of our poll, and for you all to know who's out there or who's in here, actually. And so based on our poll, let me have that poll. Can you pull that up for me? The results of the poll, I see them here. As we're pulling that up, here we go. So we have half the people in the audience are people who are actually advocating, who are sort of working for nonprofits and things like that. Another quarter are educators. We have policymakers in the room, and we even have journalists listening in. So keep that in mind as you're moving forward. We have a little bit of time early right now that you all answer the questions quicker than I thought you would, which is great. And so I want to just sort of throw it back to you really quickly. Start with you, Jason. Why are HBCUs important right now at this point in time in history?
Yeah, I think for a couple of reasons. I'll keep my comments on this one focused on the software side. So what we know is that HBCUs historically have produced some of the most successful, some of the most innovative graduates, Black graduates that are entering the workforce, entering graduate schools. I experienced it myself. I'm a graduate of Morehouse College. I went on to do my MBA at Wharton, did my graduate school education at UPenn. And what I saw was when you look at HBCU graduates, there is a level of just preparedness for the world that I think is just so critical that HBCUs nurture. The reason why I think that's so important right now as it relates to software is we're going to talk about this later, but one of the reasons why LLMs and other things are biased is because there wasn't enough representation in certain spaces for the right kinds of analysis and critical analysis to be done in the development of some of these kind of AI tools and some of these AI large language models. HBCUs are the institutions that actually create the graduates to be able to be in these spaces to ensure that whether it's the LLMs that are being coded or the software that's being developed or the schools where AI is being deployed, that we actually have the people in place to ensure that our young people, particularly Black and brown youth, are actually getting what they need from these kinds of, from this technology. So to me, HBCUs play an incredibly pivotal role in the development and deployment of these technologies. And I think that there's no substitute for that.
Well said. Dr. Morris, I mean, you're there on Morehouse's campus. You're a graduate of an HBCU. Why are HBCUs so important right now in this country at this point in time in history?
Because Black people design the future. That's why. because we are the culture that defines and designs the future. And so much of what happens in the world today is happening because we are building it. As a matter of fact, if you look around at most of the things that you tangibly touch, we have built it. And so it is critical for us to have a space to be able to continue to build and to build with integrity. And the thing about how we build as Black people is that we build for all humanity. We've never left a group out. No group gets left behind when we are behind building it. And so it's important that we are fueling these discussions, but that we're empowering our young people to be able to make the decisions and say, hey, we're not just going to sit at this table and allow you to make the decisions around me, but we are actually going to build this table because we come from ancestry that are creators, that have created and lifted up an entire community and have made all of what the world is what it is today. And so then if it's not going to be us, then who will it be? And so I stand as one, but I sit here as many, and I say that we are going to continue to do the things that we've always done, and that is to lead, to build, and to create.
Amen to that. Jeff, good brother, alpha man, you know HBCUs as well as anybody else. Why HBCUs? Why now?
So I believe that HBCUs are important because they are and always have been the laboratory of innovation. So if you think about it, in 1865, the literacy rate among Black Americans was less than 10%. By 1920, that was approaching 70%, right? That in one generation, the minute we had access to education, we went running in unprecedented numbers. So in places like Springfield Baptist Church in Augusta, Georgia, they started educating each other in the basement and later moved to Atlanta to create Morehouse College that gives us great leaders like you and like Jason. And I think we have entered a new age where that kind of creativity and that kind of community-based innovation is more necessary than ever before. It is not a secret to anyone watching us that ours is a community that is directly under attack. Mm-hmm. But what HBCUs remind us every day is that we have survived worse and thrived. Mm-hmm. That in the midst of the kind of crisis that the four of us can't even imagine, we created colleges that have lasted for more than a century and a half. And that legacy and the future innovations that will come from HBCUs are something that everybody needs, not just Black Americans. Everybody needs the HBCUs to be leaders in innovating because everyone will again benefit from what they create for the rest of us.
No, thank you, all of you, for sort of setting the groundwork and the framework for why we're here, and more importantly, what's going to come out of it. Jeff, I want to stay with you. Research shows that Black teachers and educators in urban districts have the highest usage rate of AI at 86%. In K-12 overall, Hispanic and Black students have higher usage rates at 77% and 72% respectively versus white students at 70%. So Jeff, I mean, you do this, and you know this better than anybody. Why have Black students and families been such quick adopters of artificial intelligence?
So your question ended with the words artificial intelligence. They could have ended with the words mobile telephony. They could have ended with any words. Necessity has always been the mother of invention, and Black communities have always reached out for technologies to solve practical problems. It does not at all surprise me that Black students and Black teachers have been leaders in this. At the same time, Curtis, I have to ask, what exactly are they doing? Which models do they have access to? How recent is the technology they have access to? And the truth is that we don't really have good answers to those questions yet. Even at a time when, even asking those questions, there is some question about whether much of the country thinks it's legal. I think that just as they always have, especially Black young people will take these technologies and do things with them that we can't imagine. I have been a fan of Jason Green for a long time, and I've been watching what he's been doing at Your Way Learning, and I've been a fan of Dr. Morris for a long time as well, and seen what she has been doing with virtual reality at Morehouse. But there is a 15-year-old in the Bronx about to blow both of them out of the water. If we can get them access to the most recent technology as fast as we possibly can. So I see the statistics you quoted as being evidence that Black students and Black teachers are reaching out for these technologies. It is our responsibility to make sure that the technologies they grasp are the most recent, the most powerful, so that they can lead us to where they're going to take us.
No, thank you. I mean,
funny enough, Jeff, if I could interject real quick, even if it's not the latest and the greatest model, what's so interesting about who we are as Black people is that we can do less with more.
That's right.
I mean, we can do more with less. I'm sorry. And so the more, like you said, that 15-year-old is about to create some new large language model, not by happenstance, but because what you say, the mother of invention is necessity. And so we are always looking for practicality and how to actually apply these technologies to our actual problems. And it's a certain level of grit that exists in our communities because it has to.
I could not agree.
Just like you were a fan of me, when I tell you, I could not even believe my eyes when I saw Jeff Livingston. I was like, oh my goodness. And so your mentee, Coding with Culture, Coach Victor Hicks, sends his love too. Because we grew up at CAU together at Clark Atlanta University. So we do a lot of things.
That's wonderful.
Together.
I couldn't agree more, Dr. Morris. I'm just determined that this time we're going to do more with more.
No, that's a tweet right. That's a tweet right there.
I'm here with that. Listen, that's why I spoil my students at Morehouse College with technology, and every funding dollar that I can find goes all to the students and to the faculty that innovate, because it is necessary that we do more with more.
So Dr. Morris, while you have the floor, I mean, this is a good point to ask. How often and what models are your students using at Morehouse? Is this something that they have a high usage rate, or is this data, specific to the K-12 space?
No, it's not. So students at Morehouse for a while, even though we have had full autonomy as faculty to adopt AI the way that we feel the need to and what best suits our classroom, students have been very hesitant to utilize AI in the classroom because they didn't want to be told that they were cheating or that they were utilizing resources until we began, like in my classroom, I began to teach them ways in which they should use them and how to use them with integrity. Now, what language models are they using? It depends on the class. So you have some students that prefer to use Claude. They do. You have some students that wanted Gemini. You have some students that want ChatGPT and only use ChatGPT. You have some students that are actually now, because we're starting to look at culturally responsive models, that are looking at, oh my God, where did my mind? Lattimore's model. Come on, somebody, give me the word. Why can't I call the name? So there is a culturally, I'm gonna tell you because I'm having an adult moment, but there are so many different models that are being used. Some people are using Grok. Some students are trying to figure out how to use DeepSeek. So you have students that are doing a lot of different things and tinkering in a lot of different ways, but in daily usage, I've seen more use of ChatGPT, just to be honest.
Jason, Dr. Morris actually teed up my next question, and I saw your face when she said this, and it's something I've heard you all talk about a lot, which is that Black students are more likely to be falsely accused of using AI to cheat on assignments than their white counterparts, which can lead to discipline disparities and the like. This can negatively impact on the academic performance. And so, Jason, how does your way and the work you do with teachers and school districts, especially those who are serving Black students, ensure students aren't being harmed by AI when we're trying to grow usage of it?
Yeah, I think what's interesting about these kinds of stats is AI is just a reflection of society. Black students are more falsely accused and have discipline issues outside of AI. There's bias outside of AI. And so what happens with AI is it actually is a reflection of what is already embedded in society. And we have to be careful that we don't think that AI somehow created these things. AI was created by these things and is now actually acting those things out, right? And so part of how when I made that comment earlier about how we need to be represented at every part of this kind of supply chain, if you will, right? We have to make sure from the beginning in how now, and they're getting better, right? We're actually seeing that they are getting better. They're addressing some of these issues. But now, as for myself, as an AI developer, what I have to think about is how do I create the guardrails within AI? Because we are plugged into large language models, right? How do I create the guardrails to actually mitigate for some of those biases? So what Your Way has done is, and my team, we're deeply committed to equity and how AI can actually be used in an equitable fashion, no matter who's using it. So we've pre-prompted and created specific instructional tools where when a teacher is using Your Way, we're actually helping them mitigate for what can be produced. And what that means is you're not going to get the same outputs as if you just did kind of a free-for-all of prompting. So there's ways that you can actually build in guardrails for that safety, right? The other part of this is we've actually built tools in Your Way around culturally responsive teaching, around how to actually create lesson plans that are inclusive, that are representative. Not every tool is doing that, but part of the reason why that was so important for me is because I was a student in classrooms where I wasn't represented. So I know what it's like to actually be dealing with content and curriculum and teachers and environments that don't represent me. So as an AI developer, that's front of mind for me. It's not an afterthought or a later plugin. It's literally central to our system. The last thing I want to share on this one, which I think is interesting, is when you start to think about this kind of harm conversation, we actually have history that we can look at. Social media. This isn't this is the first iteration of generative AI, but it's not the first iteration of how our young people are interacting with technology in a very immersive way, right? So part of what happened with social media was students interacted with social media in a very consumption-oriented mindset. They didn't always learn how to necessarily leverage social media in productive, learning-oriented ways. So the technology is one part of this equation, but the other part of this equation is the mindset toward how we engage with technology. Part of my mission is that Black students in particular don't just use AI as how do I go and get this answer? But they actually use AI for how do I help this make me a better learner? How do I help this make me a creator? How do I make this help me build my business? How do I help this make me, you fill in the blank? So part of this conversation I think that we all need to have is it's not just about the AI, it's the orientation that we actually instill in both our educators and our students in what it looks like to use AI as a tool for their empowerment.
Mhm.
It's a different orientation. It's a different paradigm. If we're not careful, AI can easily be harmful as a crutch, as a tool for cheating, as a let me just go get the answer.
Mhm.
Different
No,
conversation.
no, no, I appreciate that. Jeff, you were nodding your head. I did want to come to you about this idea of race and AI. You talked about this at conferences and panels. What are your thoughts on this topic? What Jason
So
said.
I think the most important thing for us to remember, and for especially all the teachers who are here with us, all the advocates who are here with us, is that AI is not neutral, right? It is not this completely objective arbiter of truth. It is formed by a context, created by human beings who bring their own bias to it. So the way that we can handle the racism that will show up in some of these models is first by admitting that they're there, right? By saying it. As I think about when I was a student and I was reading Mark Twain, or I was reading any number of Southern authors, it wasn't for me not to read them because they sometimes had racism show through. It was for me to understand that the racism was there and understand that context and to critically take a look at what was being delivered to me in the context of knowing that much of it is racist. So I have to, in the same way, as a consumer of AI, to make sure that I am always looking for transparency. I am always being critical of what I'm being told. I am always checking to see what bias shows through. And as Jason said, it's gotten a lot better. I did a couple of workshops for principals in New York City 2.5 years ago. And one thing that I did was, while they were watching in ChatGPT, I said, create 4 images. Actually, I think it was another model. 4 images of beautiful Black women. Create 4 more. Create 4 more. Not a single image was darker than Halle Berry 4 years ago. I also said, create an image of a doctor surrounded by children.
Mhm.
Give me another one. Give me another one. Okay, create an image of a doctor surrounded by African children. Create an image of an Atlanta doctor surrounded by African children. All the doctors were white. All of them in those days. That has changed because we noticed it and we said something. So each of us who has access to these technologies has to be critical and has to share with the rest of us what we learn. For example, today I got the memo and Jason got the memo that all the good-looking Black men were wearing checkered shirts, but we left Curtis out. It's our responsibility to make sure that what we learn, Curtis also knows, and the same will be true of AI. And I mentioned how we have to be smart consumers of AI, but more important than that, we have to be smart producers of AI. This has to be technology that we use. This has to be technology that we create. This has to be technology that we shape. We cannot just be on the receiving end of this. And I think it's absolutely vital that conversations like this one, led by you and the Progressive Policy Institute, keep happening so that more
Correct.
people, when they think of AI professional development, think of Jason Green, right? That more people think of virtual reality in complex subjects, they think of Dr. Morris. Because if we don't put these images out there, if we don't show that we are people who are using and doing AI, then people might forget.
Yeah.
And some of those who forget will be forgetting on purpose. And others of those who forget will be forgetting because we didn't tell them carefully enough. So I'll make sure you get the memo next time, Curtis.
Well, I mean, you all in different tax brackets, so I mean, I don't wear designer clothes. That's just that's just how it is. But so I do want to come to Dr. Moore, but before we do that, we want to go back out to our audience one more time. And so the question to the audience is, how often do you use AI in your daily life? Never, rarely, or daily? And so this is sort of taking a temperature and inventory of the folks in the audience to find out, do you even use this tool? Do you really use it, or do you use it daily? And we'll come back to that. And I want to skip around a little bit in the interest of time. And I wanted to say that HBCUs are already, making a mark in AI. HBCUs like North Carolina Central and North Carolina A&T are driving AI. In 2024, North Carolina Central, home of the first HBCU AI Institute, received a $1 million grant from Google to help drive diversity in the AI workforce. Last year, similarly, North Carolina A&T became the first HBCU to create a bachelor's degree, a standalone bachelor's degree in AI. And they're working on a master's degree in AI as well. And so, Dr. Morris, in your experience and the work that you're doing, why should HBCUs prioritize AI on their campuses?
Because it's necessary. Like, it's not optional anymore. We can't continue to say a liberal arts education only consists of these particular traditional disciplines. We have got to start saying we have infused artificial intelligence and the learning of artificial intelligence into every discipline. That is the goal. We can no longer say that we're working in these silos and we're going to put it in a software engineering department or just computer science, because it's not working like that in the real world. Every business and every industry and every vertical are using AI, period. Every single one. There is not one that is exempt. If you go to any conference, if you sit and listen to the news, you will hear artificial intelligence come up in every conversation, regardless to what it is. So by saying that, no, I'm not going to have my journalism students use artificial intelligence to help them investigate the news or to come up with a new strategy, that is insanity. To keep continuing the conversation of, well, we don't want to use this because it's saying that we're not going to be resourceful. And I think some of that is by design. Some of that, having our students to believe that they're cheating by using a resource that is available to most people, is also by design. And we've got to stop saying that, because I got an entire PhD in biomolecular chemistry from Emory University. And let me tell you something. As a young person, I thought I had to know everything about chemistry that there was to know if I got a PhD. That is not true. When I learned that they gave you the resources and said, use this when you're doing your practicum, use these tools, use these resources, even though it was static information, even though it was journal articles at the time or even microfiche, they sent you for the resources to use to get to where you needed to go. You didn't do it in isolation, and you didn't do it by memory. So my thing is, we've got to stop making people feel inferior because they do not hold all the keys to the knowledge within them. That is not how this thing works. This thing works on how resourceful you are and how are you using all of the resources that are available to you to get to whatever the end is. And so we can't continue to nitpick, oh no, this doesn't belong in biology, and no, this doesn't belong in English, and oh no, students need to write their papers from scratch. But why should they? Because the time that it is taking them to write from scratch and to try to figure out what subject and what predicate goes where, they could have already had a great example of what that paper looks like and then make a decision on whether or not that is their voice, or customizing their own AI model to be able to speak in the voice that more resonates like them. Because those are the skills that they're going to need. And what we're going to end up doing is pushing our own students out of the workforce and making their degrees almost menial and unnecessary. Like why did you even get a degree? And I've had a lot of students that have graduated and have felt that way. And my goal as an educator is to make sure that there is not another student that looks at me and say, why did I spend 4 years doing this when I have a supervisor that has a GED and not enough resources as I have had this over me? That won't happen. But we can't ice our own selves out by being so self-righteous that we won't take the tools that are there for us and use them. We can't do that. So it is more than critical. It's more than necessary. It is literally like the air that we breathe. It must be done.
Well said. I mean, you all are preaching to us today. We have a Sunday service during a webinar, and I want to keep this same energy, and I want to come to you, Jeff, because you mentioned, you teed us up in a previous conversation, a previous point, which is how do we drive what the tool as opposed to simply being using it, which is Jason is saying. And this conversation around the role that students can play and are playing in adding to the research and in developing tools. And those who are developing tools, how are they reaching, I don't want to say reaching down, but reaching into spaces where you find Black students, both in the K-12 and the higher ed space. And so in your experience, Jeff, what ways are you seeing Black K-12 and higher ed learners contributing to the development and the creation of AI tools, if at all?
So thankfully, I definitely am seeing it. And it's usually the result of people creating spaces for this brilliance to be cultivated, right? Dr. Morris was talking about HBCUs. On April 1st, I'm going to be at Houston-Tilliston in Austin, where they are doing an AI conference there. Spaces like that get created. The last time I was in Austin, I was there to judge an AI competition of high school students, almost all of them Black and Latino, sponsored by Code to College. These were high school kids, all of whom had taken AP Computer Science in school and were participating in an out-of-school time experience around AI in which Black, white, and Latino AI practitioners were showing them how they use AI in their real lives and allowing them to create new things. And what I saw just filled my heart with glee. I saw the team that ended up winning had used cameras on phones to take a photograph of a refrigerator, suggest culturally specific recipes, and order via Amazon the ingredients that were not there, right? These are 17-year-olds who were doing this. Another team led by a particularly muscular young adolescent had used a camera attached to an LLM to track how many reps they were doing and how effective those reps were based on the angles that were created by their arms and their shoulders and their knees and their legs. These kids are ready to grasp this. They are ready to do this. We just have to keep creating new spaces in order for them to do it. We absolutely have to give them that opportunity. Because, you know, I've said before, and you've heard me say, Curtis, that American music was one thing before Black kids in Brooklyn got a hold of certain digital technologies, and it has never been the same since they did. And I can't wait to see what they will do with these. Yeah. And we have absolutely got to make sure that those opportunities are available. Now, let me also say this, because I think it's important for this audience in particular to understand the truth of what I'm about to say. I know a lot of educators. I know a lot of administrators. I know a lot of college presidents. Too many of them are pretending that they understand AI. They haven't found a safe enough space to ask what they consider to be dumb questions. They haven't done what I have done and called Jason Green on the weekend and said, I think I'm understanding this. What is supposed to happen, or what others have done, and grabbed me at a conference and said, "Show me how this works." We can't sit this one out, right? We can't decide that somebody else is going to do this. We can't leave this to our favorite nephew, who, when he hears the word Python, does not think of a snake, right? All of us have to be doing this, right? All of us have to be actively involved, no matter where you are in your career, no matter where you are in the influence that you have to get involved. You have to see how different this really is today versus what was possible just a little while ago. So if the people listening today remember nothing else about what I had to say today, please hear me when I say, you pick an LLM, I don't care which one, and get on it today. Spend time on it today. See what it can do. If you've got an extra $20 a month, buy that one. You could do it with Gemini. You could do it with ChatGPT. You could even use Grok if you can stand to give Elon Musk any more money. You could you can do whatever you can, but don't hesitate.
Yeah.
Get in there, and you will be astonished at what you can do now, and how wonderful this is happening. I'll give you one example of something I did this week. I was asked to deliver a reflection to a group of Black men, most of whom are Morehouse College graduates, as it happens, who meet on Sunday mornings to do yoga. And I was asked to do a reflection, and I wrote one. But I'm like, how am I going to scroll through this Google document while I was doing it? You know what I need? I need a teleprompter. So I went on Claude 3.7 Sonnet and said, create a teleprompter for me that will allow me to incorporate a Google document into a Zoom call for a dozen people. And 20 seconds later, it had created it. I didn't have a single word of code. I just had to express in English what I wanted. And this model that cost me $20 a month did it in 20 seconds. That's where we live now. That's what we're doing now. And if anybody here hasn't done that yet, you owe it to yourself and all the young people in your life to do it today.
Because I have a friend who literally created a robot. Never have coded before. Just wanted to do it, had the parts, and said, hey, I would like to create a robot. Did it, followed the directions, and the robot was doing what he wanted it to do. And he is a technologist, but just is not a coder. So that wasn't his thing. Honestly, my husband is automating our entire house right now, and he wants to write YAML code. And he was trying to figure out how to cut the lights on when someone is occupying it, and then when they're not occupying it, move out of the room, because we have a child that has special needs, and we need to know when he's in whatever room that he's going in. And so we have sensors set up. And the way that we have safeguarded our house is by creating these automations. And literally, my husband was like, I need to write these automations. I told him, go to ChatGPT. Go figure out how to do it that way. And literally, like within seconds, he has YAML code that is written for him to be able to plug in and to be able to get the automation that he needs. And we need it because that's how we remain safe and keep our kids safe in our home. So I'm telling you, you can gain skills that you didn't think that you could gain in a matter of seconds. And it's not about, like I said, it's not about, being ashamed. We put so much shame around using these models, but what we really need to do is be sane and start using these models, because they are tools to help us. And I tell every teacher, every educator, there's a new toolkit in town, okay? And if you're not using the technological toolkit, then you're not reaching the students where they are.
Jason, I want to come to you, but I want to come back out to our audience and find out how often folks are actually using AI. Take a temperature of the audience. And so 70% of the folks on this call saying they're using it daily, and 30% are saying rarely. So no one said never, but there's still, I think some adoption to take place. And obviously people who are signing on to this webinar probably have experience with it better than others, but that gives you a little indication. I want to,
excuse me, the next time you do this, put hourly as an option.
Okay, we do that.
Put hourly as an option the next time you do this, because daily isn't often enough to encompass how often this is being used by a whole lot of people right now. Excuse me, Jason.
No, so I want to transition into this conversation, particularly on the future, and particularly the role HBCUs can play in a more direct role. And so in the paper that I mentioned at the outset that I co-wrote with Kariga Rausch, we highlight the history of what was called in the past laboratory schools. Anyone from Louisiana, from Baton Rouge, understand that Southern Lab was one of the finest schools in the South, period. But these schools allowed sort of HBCU trained educators to learn firsthand and to actually work with students without even leaving the campus, because there were schools that were based right there. We also highlight in the paper that there are HBCUs right now in 2025 that actually have particularly charter schools that are on their campuses where students are coming to campus every day, getting dual enrollment, taking classes. Schools like Delaware State, Howard University, Coppin State University, and soon to be Stillman College in Alabama all have charter schools on their campus.
And you're forgetting your own alma mater.
Morehouse
Dr. Gilbert has started a lab school as well with Utopian Academy for the Arts at Morehouse College.
Thank you so much for making that connection as well.
Wow.
I do want to add Voorhees College is one of the first HBCUs that actually can authorize charter schools, which actually means that schools have to apply to Voorhees College. They get money from the state of South Carolina and actually hold those schools accountable. So we're seeing a sea change in a way that we haven't seen in a generation around putting K-12 students on HBCUs campuses as laboratories for innovation and research. So Jason, in your opinion, in what ways could future educators, researchers, ed tech founders like yourself at HBCUs benefit from having actual K-12 students on campus? And how will those K-12 students benefit from being on campus at HBCUs, having connection to students who are future ed tech founders who are studying AI on a daily basis?
Wow. I mean, I think that's a powerful question. And I think that pushes us to what I believe is true intergenerational learning. So I want to go back to something. I'm going to come to it because this will, like as Dr. Morris and Jeff were speaking, what was on my mind was we're right now in a conversation about when we're saying AI, what we're actually saying is generative AI, right? It's the phase of AI that we're in right now that's able to actually create things based on kind of human language, right? We are some number of years, and depending on who you talk to, the number is 3, the number is 10. We're some number of years away from what is called artificial general intelligence, which is essentially when AI goes from being a very smart computing across strands of expertise to actually being able to flow across multiple fields of expertise and be literally the supercomputer that has the global information and knowledge and intelligence that far surpasses human intelligence. Okay. We are somewhere between 3 to 10 to 15, probably closer to that lower end from that. Here's why I bring that up is because even the conversation that we're in today is on its way to being outdated because of how fast AI is shifting. Now, when you ask then about what does it mean to have these multi-generations on campus, it's the same as asking the question of what it meant to have what we used to call digital natives interacting with Zoomers and Boomers and Gen Xers like myself, right? They actually brought a different perspective to the conversation because they lived it differently. We're going to have now a new generation coming in where Generative AI is yesterday's news. Think about that for a minute. We're not far from a new generation coming in where generative AI, this thing that we still think is like this cool thing, is actually just a thing that they do. So I share that to say this notion of having these younger people, right? These kind of K-12 schools and students interacting with these higher education adults, professors, and students. What I actually think, and Jeff knows this, my research and my background is deeply rooted in an incredible researcher named Dr. Arnitha Ball out of Stanford University. And fundamental to her research was the idea that teachers and students should actually be in a constant state of co-creation of new knowledge together. What that means is the dynamic of teacher has content that is imparted on students no longer actually even fits. It doesn't fit anymore. So imagine the environment that you talked about where we're literally all in a space where we're creating new knowledge together. The last thing I'll share on this one is I just spoke at a high school conference at Manhattan high schools in New York City. We do a lot of work in New York City. And you had students that were actually on stage sharing their knowledge of AI, and they were teaching the adults in the room. Because to Jeff's earlier points, they were further ahead with this work than most of the adults were. So I actually think, Curtis, this idea of K-12 institutions on college campuses and working together with professors, with the students at the college level, at all ages is extremely powerful. And it's one that we actually not only would benefit from, but I actually think it needs to happen.
I agree. Dr. Morris, you mentioned Utopia Academy and its connection to Morehouse. How can having connections with students and K-12 educators improve the learning, the research, the development of Morehouse College students and their growth and ability to drive AI? And then how will that also help those your students at Utopia at the same time?
So it helps to build this continuous talent pipeline that we always talk about. We talk about how we don't do enough outreach for our students, but it is actually happening and it's a fluid thing. So Dr. Miller has an opportunity to use the resources at Morehouse College, but we have an opportunity to have our pre-service education students also learn from doing research at an actual K-12 institution that is opening up the doors to allowing them to use emerging technologies that have the capacity, because they're a charter school, to not have to follow all of these other rules, but can innovate as we are building a rocket ship as we're going to space kind of thing. So our students are learning because they're able to do research alongside K-12 educators that are actually in service and in the field right now. And they're able to incorporate some of the emerging technologies that they're learning about right now in real time. Same thing goes to those K-12 educators. They're getting to witness and to mentor and to learn from our young people too, but also from our professors that are doing research at a higher level. And that information flow is just continuing to go. So it's a different type of workflow that's happening. Plus, early exposure to these technologies is only going to make young people better. And it strengthens our HBCU enrollment and retention because, contrary to popular belief, and I grew up in Decatur, Georgia, where it's ultimately greater, students do not know about HBCUs the way that we think they do. We think just because they are African American or Black students that they know about the history, the richness, the nurturing that happens. Most of the time, the things that they hear are the bad things, the things that, oh, they're less than, or it's a lack. they don't hear always the good things, the innovation that's coming out of it, the nurturing that happens, the continuous relationships that you have that are built. And so we're creating and strengthening these relationships that need to happen, because honestly, life is really all about relationships. And I can tell you now, to go onto my campus and sit and have lunch with the same professors that I was taught by, and to see the pride that they have in me, that connection, it doesn't leave. And so it creates a better human being, and it makes me and allows for me to be a person that when I look in the mirror, I am who I hoped I would be. And I want all children to feel that way. And so that's what having a lab school will allow you to be able to do. It is necessary. And plus we have the federal TRIO programs on our campus. Upward Bound. I've been working with them for over 13 years. And so having these students from all over the nation, first generation college students, come onto campus and be able to see themselves embodied in some of these works is equally as important. So it's necessary right now. And it's a call to action for all of our institutions to really do more outreach, pour into our communities more, and to create spaces, because I could tell you the success rates of when schools were on college campus, the amount, like, that is, daycares aren't even on college campuses like they used to be anymore. And that is really important, to see that entire family unit be built up and edified, and young people be edified as they are growing on these college campuses. So I'd love to see that happen again at our HBCUs.
Curtis, if I could,
I want to give you a prompt, Jeff, and I'll let you go, but I want to give you the final word on this, because we're wrapping up. So, Vision of the World, Voorhees College in South Carolina is authorizing Jeff Livingston academies for young boys who wear designer plaid T-shirts all throughout South Carolina. Right? They are being based on HBCU campuses like Claflin, like South Carolina State, like Morris College. And so you are embedding yourself on these HBCU campuses. How does that change the future of research and ed technology and all the things that Jason is mentioning? How does that change the reality for Black college students in South Carolina, but also Black K-12 students and their trajectory in this space? And you get the final word on this, Doc.
It does it in a number of ways. Number one, it is a return. Nearly all the historically Black colleges and universities started with high schools on their campuses because of when they were created and where students came from, and they had to be prepared. Martin King started Morehouse as a 15-year-old junior from Booker T. Washington High School. So the presence of K-12 students on HBCU campuses is not a new thing. We're going back. But what it does is, both for the students who get to grow up on a college campus and understand exactly what the expectations are, exactly what scholarship is, exactly how knowledge is created, those students benefit. And for those universities that prepare teachers, again, nearly all of the HBCUs are teacher preparation factories too, they actually get to interact with the students. When I started in the education technology business, even before Jason did, because I'm much, much, much older, the typical ed tech product looked like what a 60-year-old thought a 13-year-old wanted to do. Today, they look like what a 35-year-old thinks a 13-year-old wants to do. That is better than it used to be, but not good enough. If you are interacting with students constantly, you can't help but get better at doing the things that they need to do, at doing those things. One thing that I want Voorhees to do is to join Claflin and to join Shaw in North Carolina in being a part of HBCUV. The United Negro College Fund has created a digital platform to share academic resources between HBCU campuses that is working right now today. So if you are a high school student who's going to drive straight down the street from Sumter High School to Voorhees College, why should you have to wait until you're a freshman to experience that. I don't think you should. In addition to charter schools, Curtis, I think more HBCUs should have early college high schools as well, that actually bring high school students onto campus. Take your algebra course at Clark Atlanta, the way students at Drew Charter School can do right now. Take an English course, that's English 101 at South Carolina State, and also serves as your English 4 credit at Orangeburg Wilkinson High School. We have got to eliminate the artificial barrier between high school and college. Most people don't do what the three of us did here. They do more like what Dr. Morris did. They go to college right down the road from where they grew up. They go from Decatur to Clark Atlanta University. And so let's stop pretending that that is not what is happening. Let's stop pretending that Voorhees is recruiting in Salt Lake City. Voorhees students come from South and North Carolina. Bring them sooner, bring them closer to the experience. It'll make Voorhees better, it'll make the high schools better, it'll make the students better, and it'll begin to restore the sense of community that Black communities have had with HBCUs from the beginning and need now as much as we ever did.
Thank you so much, brother. That's a great place to finish on that final word. I want to thank you all for joining me. Just so you all know, I love my job because I'm able to sit down and invite people who are much smarter than me to the table to learn as I'm also moderating. And so I'm so blessed to be able to reach out to these folks. And they all responded within minutes of me asking, saying, Curtis, you just say when. In part because this is just so important. This is just too important to miss out on. And we do not want to be left behind because, as we've said so many times, we've driven this historically, and we're going to drive it again. And our young people who look just like us are waiting for us to take the lead. So thank you all so much. Please follow the work that each of them are doing at Your Way Learning, at Solutions, at Morehouse College, and continue to take touch with us. Download our paper, HBCUs as Charter School Authorizers. If you're an HBCU leader, please reach out to me. If you want to learn how to bring any of these leaders to your school, but also talk about how you can bring a K-12 school to your campus to drive research, innovation, and education, we're here for you. Thank you all so much. You all have a great
Thank you, Curtis, for everything that you do to put to
well done
conversations.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you so much.